New Thought Media Network proudly presents A Science of Mind Saturday Conversations. Learn more about the Science of Mind philosophy, faith, and way of life. Join our team of experts for a weekly deep dive discussion. Come study the science of mind, chapter by chapter, and resources from the Science of Mind archives. Plan to join us every Saturday, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, only on the New Thought Media Network.
Good morning, everybody. Mark Gilbert here, and it's great to be back with you. First presentation I've been doing in the year 2026. It's great to be with you, and welcome to everybody who is joining in. I appreciate you taking the time out of your Saturday morning to spend a few minutes with me as we move through a discussion regarding the science of mind. And today we are going to be looking at the second part of the introduction in the Science of Mind textbook, which is the topic of the way it works. And, as you know, if you're familiar with the Science of Mind and the Science of Mind textbook, you know that there's an introduction to the textbook at the very beginning that has 4 short little introductory chapters. They're not really chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. They're like parts 1 through 4 of an introduction. And the whole idea was at the beginning of the book was to give you a brief overview of the entire philosophy. Last week, the discussion was regarding the thing itself. This week, the way it works. Coming up is what it does and how to use it. Now, putting those in somewhat modern English phrases for you, when we talk about, like last week, the thing itself, you could say God, spirit, the power or force or intelligence that is behind this universe. And so that introductory aspect of life, that introductory aspect of what is behind all that exists was what was covered last week. This week, we're looking at the way it works. That is, how does it work in terms of this manifest universe in which we find ourselves living and moving through? You know, we teach in Science of Mind that we are spiritual beings moving through a human experience. And so what is the spirituality in terms of how this powerful intelligence moves and acts within this universe? And that's what we're talking about today. Next week is what it does. And that means what it does in terms of manifestations, what it does in terms of its work through us. And then the final introductory section is how to use it, which is for us to consciously understand this process so we can take it out into the world of form and do and manifest the greatest and highest lives for ourselves. Now, as we always say, we like this to be a conversation. And so if you're watching this live, and would love for you to drop in the comment field, the chat field, in whatever means you're looking at this. Drop a comment as to what your name is and where you are in the world, so we can acknowledge that you're here watching live with us. Plus, as we go through this and you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them into the comment field. I would certainly love to get your feedback on what's on your heart, what's on your minds this morning. You know, we use the Science of Mind textbook chapter by chapter the first half of the year, and then in the second half of the year, we use other resources from the Science of Mind archives, like it said on the intro. And but all of this is to foster a dialogue between those of you watching and myself. And so we can take this wherever you want, because in a philosophy that teaches that everything is one, although the philosophy is sort of like is wrapped up in a big ball of oneness. And sometimes when you go to address that, you can pop into it in any direction because it's all connected in how we are. So in any case, love to hear who is on the line. Shay, thanks for being with us again this morning. Shay, I just love that you're consistently here and enjoy your conversation. So thank you very much. And we also have Mark from Virginia. So Mark is talking with Mark. So we have Remark and Mark. which was an old joke when I was a kid. So thanks for being here from Virginia. Anybody else that's joining live, be sure to drop your name and location in the comment field. And I'm going to go through this morning a series of quotes from the textbook. And what we're going to be doing is actually, if you want to follow along, this is the pages out of the textbook, pages 35 through 39. But the pertinent quotes I'm going to be bringing up on the screen, so you can see what I'm going to be referencing. I'm going to pull out some quotes that I think are key comments that we can use to bridge into an understanding of a discussion about how this infinite power and presence in the universe works in the universe. And so as you hear that comment and it brings up anything in your awareness that you'd like to share, feel free to drop that into the comment field. We got JJ here from Erie, Pennsylvania. Welcome, JJ. Thank you for being with us. Again, anyone who is joining us live, feel free to drop your name and location in the comment field, however you're watching this, and be sure to drop any thoughts you've got into that. Now, keep saying that off and on because I do wish this to be a dialogue. But having said all that, let's dive into our first quote. And this comes actually from page 35 of the textbook. And here it says that we have discussed the nature of the thing as being universal energy, mind, intelligence, spirit, finding conscious and individualized centers of expression through us, and that man's intelligence is this universal mind functioning at the level of man's concept of it. This is the essence of the whole teaching. You know, I pull this out, especially because Holmes writes in here, Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, writes that this paragraph or this summary, a statement on page 35, is what he sees as the essence of the entire teaching of the Science of Mind. Now, you could make a case that maybe it's not totally the entire essence, but it does get at the background of the whole philosophy and something that we need to keep in mind. And the fact that there is a power, a presence, an intelligence. We can call it whatever we want. You can call it Bob or George or Mark. You can call it any word. A word is just something that is standing in our descriptiveness towards the power and essence that's behind everything. Now, as you sit here in your own life and in your awareness and your consciousness, you're aware of your thoughts and your being and the surroundings around you. You have memories of your life and your experience. You've thought about, in terms of any of your experiences, in meditation or moving through physical life, that there is something more to life. And so the very first thing that we have to acknowledge is there is this one thing that is ineffable, that is unnameable, that any word that we try to use to describe it is just a limiting description. It's just something for us as pockets of individualized expression, parts of the oneness. We're trying to communicate with one another, and we're wanting to reference this power that's behind everything that we all feel. And so the thing itself is how Holmes describes it in his topics here, but he also acknowledges that we can call it universal energy, mind, intelligence, spirit. We can call it God. Sometimes I avoid the word God, especially with some people, because that brings up in our current culture the connotations of, the old man in the sky, the Sistine Chapel painting of God reaching out as a man, reaching out with his hand, to Adam. And that vision pops up to us so that when we use the word God, it reflects oftentimes an anthropomorphic or a humanized aspect of God. But what we have to really move beyond is that and recognize that when we say God, spirit, the thing itself, that we're really referencing something that is the energy that is behind everything, the intelligence that is behind everything. So the very beginning aspects of Science of Mind is to recognize, as I think we all feel in our hearts and minds, that there is something driving this universe, that there is a power. Now, we can bump into materialist people in the world, and they like to say, oh, there's no God. And when I hear that, I like to say, well, describe for me the God that you don't believe in, because I probably don't believe in that either. And what I typically find is they're referencing the old man in the sky god is how I like to reference it. And obviously, from a human standpoint, and looking out at the scientific findings of materiality in our world, we can look at it and say, yeah, well, it doesn't make sense that there's an old man in the sky that's going to judge us upon our death. But that's not what science of mind, nor most esoteric aspects of most religions behind their dogmatic teachings, most don't teach that. Most recognize that there is this flow of intelligent energy that gives rise to the experience of our human feelings and thoughts. And so the very first thing we have to do in science of mind is change our orientation about what God is. And when I talk with other people, I often have to begin with that and say, whatever your definition of God is, if it's an old man in the sky that you believe in or you don't believe in, that's not what we teach as part of science of mind. We teach that it is this universal energy mind. In fact, I will also, an aside, say that when I first came to science of mind, the name mind, science of mind, well, I always thought of mind as being this aspect of conscious awareness that I carry around within the skull. There's an individual human, because in the context of science and especially psychology, they tend to use mind as a reference for our individual consciousness. But when we talk about mind and science of mind, you'll notice we often use a capital M, and that's to reference the fact that capital M, mind, is a mind or consciousness or the thing itself that's embedded in everything, that is flowing through everything. We often say mind or consciousness is the ground of all being. That is, what is the essence of this universal experience we're having? And it's not physical matter, as scientific materialists believe, but in science of mind, we teach that the ground of all being, the essence of the universe, is something called mind, which it can also be seen as consciousness, or the capital C. And so when we see those capital letters, we're referencing that it is this oneness of mind, God, energy that is in everything. Well, let's go on with a quote, because he's saying, okay, this is the power behind everything, but it finds conscious and individualized centers of expression through us. What does that mean? It means that this divine essence, this intelligence, flows through you and it flows through me. We often say, in it we live and move and have our being. Well, what that phrase often is trying to get at is that God is moving through us. Spirit is moving through us. Mind is flowing through us. That when mind or consciousness is the ground of all being, it is the ground of our experience. It means that mind or consciousness is in everything we experience. That means that this material physical realm, including our physical bodies and the workings of our cells and the firings of our neurons and all of the physical aspects of our body, are at their base intelligent mind consciousness. And so the consciousness is embedded in everything. Consciousness is embedded in the rocks, the plants, lower animals, as we like sometimes call them, humans, things that even transcend beyond us. That the consciousness is in everything, but consciousness has moved in through this process of this physical life in which we find ourselves and is embedded and moves through us. And so one of the great things that Science of Mind teaches is that you and I are pockets of consciousness in this oneness of consciousness, that consciousness flows through you as you, and you're an individualized expression of this oneness. And so it doesn't make you an individual, because as using the word individual or unique or different or separate connotes separation. And we have to recognize that we teach unity and oneness, that you're not a separate individual, you're an individualized expression of a flow of energy. A common analogy we like to use is that there's an ocean of God energy, and in that ocean of God energy, we're like little wavelets popping up, and we can have at the base of ourselves in this ocean is the essence of the truth of us, that Spirit, God, the thing itself, is moving through us and has all the power of God at our essence available to us. But as we pop up in these little droplets in the ocean looking out, little wavelets, we have our own unique, special perspective. We've popped up and we look at life through our own lens, our own thoughts. And this is how God experiences itself. You might say, why does this process exist? We can't essence and say that God has a need, But we are here, as Aurobindo liked to say, for the delight of the divine. And later in life, Holmes liked to lock onto that phrase and quote Aurobindo because he liked it too, that you and I are here as individualized expression of this one mind for God or the thing itself to express itself through your unique talents and my unique talents. We're here to live our lives and have the experiences of our life. That's why we don't see uniformity within the unity of oneness, because your life is unique and my life is unique, and every individualized person that we meet has their unique lives. Spirit is moving through them and experiencing their life as them. You might look at it that every person you interact with is God, and that they are God expressing as that person, and that God or Spirit is having the experience of that person. But they've also given them free will so they can make their choices and thoughts and live their life in a unique way. So although we are united in a unity of oneness, we're not uniform. We don't act alike because we're those little pockets of individualized expression through which universal mind or spirit is moving through us. And so when we can get that mindset into us, then we're really getting at the essence behind science of mind. And then it says, okay, if we're individualized expressions of the one, and we're here for the delight of the divine, and God is moving through us with giving us our unique talents and gifts and calling us to express them, then how are we going to use that knowledge and move forward in our individual lives? And that gets to really the essence of science of mind teaching. So I hope this is making sense. But again, if you've got a comment, drop it in the comment field. If you're watching as the banner says across the screen, I'd love to know who you are and what your location is in the world, and any questions or comments about anything on science of mind or anything that you hear me say. Feel free to drop in and leave a question or a comment or reaction to it. I'll move on to the next quote. This one's kind of a long one, and let's move through it in let's bring it forward here. There's a universal mind, spirit, intelligence that is the origin of everything. That's just what I've been saying. Okay, so this is a little repetitive. It is first cause. What does he mean by first cause? It means it's the universal cause of everything that exists. We like to think that the causes of the universe are us making physical acts. You know, that I move my hand and pick up a glass of water, or I drive my car, that I am the cause of those actions. It was my most physical body driving the car. It was my physical hand making the movement of the glass of water, et cetera. You think of all of our actions as being a cause. They're causal in what Holmes referred to as secondary causes. Secondary causes are causes in the world of physical form where you might think of it like playing a game of billiard balls, and, you know, the act of moving the billiard stick to hit the ball, to knock the other balls, and they all move in their own direction. All of those balls bumping around are like secondary causes in this world of form. But what was the primary cause? It was the thought in consciousness that led to the movement of the cue stick. So the consciousness behind the cue sticks to set the whole world of action in motion. So there is first cause is consciousness or intelligence behind everything. So that's what Holmes means by first cause. It's the causal nature that comes from the realm of consciousness or mind, as opposed to secondary causes, which are causes like billiard balls hitting one another in a physical world. Okay, it's God. It's this universal life and energy which finds an outlet in and through all that is energized and through everything that lives. There is one life back of everything that lives. There's one energy back of everything that's energized. This energy is in everything. There is one spirit back of all expression. That is the mystical meaning of the saying, in him we live and move and have our being, as I just said a moment ago. So as we move through that quote, and it's a little repetitive because it's just building on the first kind of comments, we have to recognize that there is this one life and that there is a causal nature through consciousness. The very fact that intelligence or mind can think a thought, that thought has creative aspect to it. It is what Holmes calls first cause. And so spirit, God, the thing itself, has the power to begin things in a causal manner to create the universe and to create all of this physical form that is we're moving through and having our experience as. And this power and this intelligence, it's in you and it's in me. And we have access to first cause. We have access to first cause through our conscious awareness. And so as we'll get into in subsequent weeks, but again, because everything is united in this philosophy, it's hard not to talk about one part without getting into the other, is that the essence of the teaching is to recognize that, and that the power of your thoughts has creative ability, that the power of your thoughts is God moving through you. God gives you the ability to have this free will choice of thoughts, and that your thoughts are actually generating the creation of your life. We often come into life in the science of mind philosophy thinking that all of the secondary causes out there in life are the actions that are impacting us and deriving how our life is. We say, oh, if we think our lives, we're victim of circumstances, we may say, look at what's going on in the world. Look at the life that I've raised. If I was born into this family in this country and these events, and I learned these things, and woe is me because I've accepted all of this. And what Science of Mind wants you to see is that once you recognize this, you have the power through your thinking to change your life. That you can consciously switch yourself from being a victim to you being the result of secondary causes in the world out there impacting you, but you can insert a new thought. This whole philosophy is called New Thought for that very reason, because we have the ability to insert new thoughts into the causal chain of being. Back to my billiard ball table, if we hit the stick and knock the balls, the universe is in motion and things are going to happen. And we can look out at the world and say, look at all the stuff that's going on, and I am just subject to it. But if we become empowered to recognize, oh, I can insert a new movement of the cue stick, then we can make changes in our own lives, in our own world, in our sphere of influence. We can have an impact and make a change. So I hope this is making sense. And, again, for those of you who are watching live, I invite you to share your name and location, and also drop a comment in the comment field. I would love to hear any reaction. Those of you who've been with me before know that I can certainly rattle on and share the stream of consciousness thoughts about science of mind philosophy, and I hope that you find it beneficial. But I'm also welcome to your comments and thoughts, and let's dialogue and respond around it. So those of you who are still with me live, go ahead and do that. But anyway, let's go to the next slide, and let's see if Mark has the ability to create that. All right. Next quote is a little shorter than the other quotes. It says, our thought and emotion is the use we make consciously or unconsciously of this original creative thing that is the cause of everything. I was sort of hitting on that a second ago. I was hitting that on that in the sense that, that we, through the power of our thinking, can insert a new causal action in the universe. Holmes also adds that our emotions have an ability to it. And the reason he links thoughts and emotions, and we don't often stress that a lot, but it is true. In fact, if you attend any Science of Mind classes, they will get into that, and especially the power of affirmative prayer and using the prayer techniques that are taught in the Science of Mind. They often talk about the fact that the more emotion and feeling and color and flavor that we can put to our prayer, the more that we are, the more results we'll see. And so why do we say emotions? Well, It gets to the power of belief. Can I think a thought and not believe it? Think about that for a minute. Can you think a thought and not believe it? I can think a thought and not believe it. I can immediately say, I'm going to win the lottery tonight. And then there was immediately another thought that comes up right after that. Oh, sure. You haven't even bought a ticket, Mark. Well, go buy a ticket. Even if I buy the ticket, there's a thought of me, oh, the odds are blah, 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 blah. So I can think a thought that says what I hope to create. But if I also think another thought that is counter to that thought, I have mixed thinking and I have mixed reactions. And that's why it's taught in Science of Mind to bring what it is you desire into a conscious thought and consciously think it. Believe it. And if our emotions are not tied to that, if we truly don't believe it, then emotional reactions to our thoughts are going to bring in doubt. And so we have to bring in an emotional level of acceptance that this is true, coupled with our thoughts, to be able to flow through this divine energy. All of our thinking is really just a movement in consciousness. Consciousness is constantly flowing through us. And whenever we think, those thoughts are creating a movement in this energetic field of consciousness. And so what are we thinking? What are we putting into that flow? If it's, I'm going to win the lotto, no, I'm not. I'm going to win the lotto, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Then I am not going to win it. If I'm thinking that we're going to see positive change and love is going to express itself on the planet, and then I doubt that, then I see that not the doubts give rise to mixed expressions in the planet. So we have to recognize that we can make use of consciously this thing. Now you'll notice he also says unconsciously there, because our unconscious beliefs also impact us. Because when we think one thing for a lot of times, we start making acceptance that this is the way it is, such that it automatically becomes just an unconscious belief. So many times in our own lives, we drive around, we don't even consciously think things are going to happen. Think when you get into the car, is the car going to start? Most likely it is. And so you just have an unconscious belief the car is going to start, and then the car starts. You can drive unconsciously oftentimes because your body takes over and unconsciously knows the direction. You can lose yourself in thought, and unconsciously you're driving along and driving your car. You can make actions in the world automatic. And sometimes those automatic actions are the beliefs, those underlying beliefs that are continuously just automatically driving us. And so I can consciously try to change gears or directions, but if my unconscious beliefs are at play and moving me in my old direction, then they are going to be the ones that automatically direct my life. That's why a lot of the times in Science of Mind, we like to get at our unconscious beliefs. A lot of our classes are really about what is it you really believe about love and relationships and jobs and careers and abundance, and what are all these accepted things that you've taken on since you were young that are driving your belief thoughts. Sometimes we know our thoughts, we know what we believe, and sometimes they're unconscious, they're hidden. So there's techniques and things that you can do to bring those to the surface, and then you can hold them up and say, is this valid for me? Do I really truly believe this? So in our movement of understanding our ability to insert a new first cause into the lifeful process, we have to recognize our own power in this, and so we can tap this. This will be stressed more and more in the next couple of weeks, especially when we get into the how to use it aspect. But obviously, we're already touching on that. It's the ability to know the flow of energy and consciousness within you and to make a different choice. And let's look at another quote here. The thing, that is God, Spirit, works for us by working through us and is us always. Now, this sounds fairly repetitive if you've been following along. It works through us. Spirit, God, this infinite intelligence, this power that is in the universe, it's working through us, always, whether we're conscious of it or not, whether we are consciously thinking something or just unconsciously going along, in our lives. It's always working, always working, always working. It cannot work for us in any other way because it's always there. We are always immersed and living and moving and having our being as spiritual beings in this manifest physical universe of the divine. The power and presence of God is always in us. It spreads itself over the whole universe and shouts at us from every angle. But it can become power to us, and he puts this in caps, only when we recognize it as power. Do we recognize God as a power? That's the question. Do you see in your life, as you knock around in your life, living your life every day, do you see that you have access to a power and a flow through you? That you have this ability through conscious thinking and your emotions that truly, truly believe and accept what you're thinking, that you can redirect your life in your sphere of life. There's a saying that, we will believe it when we see it. We flip it and say, you'll see it when you believe it. That the manifestations of the life out there and the life around us in the experiences that you're having as the spiritual being moving through this human experience is all under your ability to shift and to manifest the greatest and highest life for good. But only when, as Holmes emphasizes here, only when you recognize it as power. What we often do is say, yeah, God's intelligence and power and mind, and it's there and it's available for me. And we think about it, and then we forget about it and go about living our life. We get immersed in the life of form, and then we give the power away to secondary causes out there. We have to live our life anchored, knowing there's a power moving through us. This is like building a muscle, folks, because you can understand it intellectually, and then you get out in life and somebody says, woe is me, and you say, woe is me back to them. They can complain about what's going on in our political arena, and you can complain back around them as well. And we can immediately forget that we have this power. We immediately give our power over. Sometimes we want to commiserate with other people. We like that connection we feel with other people. But we forget that in the doing so, sometimes we are submitting ourselves to the flow of this power for negative ability. Let's see, we have the question. We've been born into a lot of universal beliefs that take practice to get dissolved. Oh, wow, that is the truth, Mark. So many and it gets back to that point a moment ago about conscious or unconscious. Now we're born onto the planet, and we are immediately acclimated as young babies and children into things about here's how things work. We pick up on things from our parents and the people around us, and we as intelligent little children try to figure out, how am I going to work through this life? And so we pick up beliefs learned from other people, but we also have aspect to a collective subjective consciousness. There is an unconscious aspect of the collective consciousness that is also there as well. And we can tap into that through our one mind as well. And so what does that mean for us? We can consciously think one thing, but driving us is unconscious beliefs. It could be built on the patterns of our life experiences and things we've accepted and habits that we formed that we need to hold up to. But we also need to hold up to ourselves these universal beliefs that have, been around since, man evolved in this physical incarnation. And we need to recognize, that some of those are playing out right now. There tends to be this universal belief that human beings are inherently bad. You can look at some traditional faiths that say that we are born as sinners, sinners, and that it's, some religions teach that, it's the power, it's for the purpose of parents to shake that sinful nature out of you. It's the parent. It's your role to recognize that you're evil and a sinner, and let go of it by proclaiming some religious faith belief. And the aspect of that is just, it's a collective belief that people believe oftentimes that we are inherently bad. And what Science of Mind teaches is that we're inherently good, that when we can shift away from these universal beliefs that teach us that we're bad and evil people, and that, and that's baked into the cake of all our stuff. You can look at economic theory, and economic sciences are built around the fact that people will act in their own selfish interest. I was reading something the other day by an economist that says that most economic practices don't take into account that most people are altruistic. Most people are good. The fact that they always think we're going to act in selfish interest. Many of the actions and decisions that are made by certain political philosophies are built around the sense that we are selfish entities. And we can see a lot of selfishness going on the planet. There's no doubt about it. But that is just a universal belief that people have accepted. And there's a greater and grander belief we can accept, that people are born, and I know that we know this at our heart level, that we are loving beings. We're born onto the planet. A child isn't born thinking he wants to cause harm or control others. This child is born as love. We're all born with love. The very nature that our hearts are open to children and pets and things that open our hearts to love is a reinforcement to ourselves that the truth of us is beyond the universal belief that we may be evil and only interested in self-interest, that we really are at our hearts good. And that's one of the key points of Science of Mind, is that we are good. Shay writes, can you touch on the science and quantum physics behind why using the mind to create works? Thank you. I could speak a little bit about that, but this brings to an interesting thing. There is, I think what some people like to say in terms of quantum physics and why it supports Science of Mind is that when you get at, first off, there's two kinds of physics. There's classic physics from long ago, which works in the macro level of the big stuff. But a little over 100 years ago, the actual facts of quantum physics, things that working at the very small, was discovered. And one of the things they found in that was that things work in a sort of uncertainty, that they work in patterns, and that there is an action. And they've done this through something called the double split experiment, which you can go and Google that and read more detail on it. But at the essence of it, what it shows is that an action occurs and is in a state of variable array about how it might exhibit itself. That there is an uncertainty into how things are going to knock around at the quantum level. But then when someone goes to measure it, by looking at it and taking a measurement of it, that uncertainty and that random ability collapses into something. In the double split experiment, what they showed was that by firing photons through a photon gun, that it would display a random pattern but if you went to measure it as a photon, it narrowed itself down and went through the slits individually as a way, so that it shows up as two different ways depending on whether you measure it or you're measuring it or not. I'm not explaining that quite well, but hopefully what the key point is in quantum physics is that everything at the very, very small level is working in a degree of randomness, and that there is an availability for things to show up in any manner or form. And that what they've shown is that when we introduce the conscious act of measuring something, this wide array of infinite potential collapses itself down into the experience that we're measuring. So many people like to point at that and say, we have scientific evidence for the power of thinking, because by introducing conscious thought into the experiment, the act of measuring is seen as the conscious thought. We can collapse it into what it's going to exist as. So many see this and argue that as, at the quantum level, the ability for things to collapse and infinite possibilities to collapse into something through the power of introducing conscious thought. That is, that's interesting, and maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. There is a counter argument I'll put out there that I've heard other people say, and that why do we need that? Why do we need to have quantum physics support this belief? Because there's also an aspect that, and stay with me on this one, let's just go back. We live in a physical universe, but we also live in a spiritual universe. And we also live in a stratified universe. Holmes wrote about this. Most people who have had mystical experiences speak of this. If you look at the teachings of the all major faiths, what's called the perennial philosophy, when you pull out the major aspects of them, they all teach that we're spiritual beings moving through a human experience. That means that the spiritual aspect of our nature transcends the physical world. It means that when we move up in vibratory levels to the highest senses of our being, we leave behind dimensions of physical reality and we move into the world of the non-physical. So what you can consider it is that, we go from rocks to plants to animals to humans to shades of consciousness and awareness where we're leaving behind the physical world. You can think of it as vibratory levels, moving up a stratification to higher and higher levels of being. And at the highest levels, we transcend the physical nature totally. And that the most of the mystical states of non-duality recognize that at non-duality, there is a transcendent nature that transcends physical form, but that physical form is also contained within it. What this means is that that aspects of our truth transcends everything that looks physical, but our experience of the physical is also included within that non-dual nature. Now that sounds kind of fuzzy and freaky if you're first encountering it, but how it relates to quantum physics, Shay, is that although quantum physics can prove from a physical standpoint that consciousness has a play in the quantum world, in terms of collapsing infinite possibilities into one choice. Quantum mechanics and physics is still an aspect of the physical world, and that consciousness and our very truth transcends the physical world in and of itself. And once we get that, sometimes we're trying to use the physical world through quantum physics to explain and justify and prove science of mind and other philosophies that teach the power of mind and thinking. When the truth is, these philosophies are incorporated into a non-dual reality that transcends physical nature altogether. And so, yes, perhaps they help support us and give faith to us and bring that emotional aspect in it to allow us to believe the teachings, the power of mind at a greater level. But at some point, you even have to let go of that and recognize that there's a transcendent nature where we don't need to prove it through scientific means. Okay, I hope that made some sense. You also write, looking out there's a valid argument that we appear to be not for the delight of God. How are we supposed to reconcile this? Gets at the point of evil. Yes. This is an interesting one. And we'll probably have to end on this because I see we're running out of time here. But this gets at something that I would argue is our perspective. What do I mean by that? I mean, get back to that ocean thing I mentioned a moment ago, and where the little wavelets coming up. We all have our own individual perspective of how things work. If we can tap into the oneness and get into that non-dual nature through meditation and other spiritual techniques, we recognize that what we call good and bad in the world of human activities is just an experience that we're moving through. And so when we say, how can Hitler, Mussolini, pick your bad guy that you would call as evil? Many people would look at many of the events going on in the current world. We can say, how is this for the delight of God? But what we're doing is making that decision from our little individual perspective. Now, I get it. because I look out on a lot of stuff, and I, in my human awareness as Mark, I judge stuff as less than what I want it to be. I know that we are divine beings and that we are anchored in love, but I see a lot of people who have forgotten that. I see a lot of people who are in separation, fear, and divisiveness, and they are making choices and actions that are for less than the greatest good. And I can see it, and from my perspective, I can judge it as negative. I have to also acknowledge that they've moved through their own human experiences and their own lives, and that they're making their free will choices based on how they've lived their life and how they're viewing it. And this gets at the heart of what most spiritual philosophies say is the really root meaning of the word sin, an old archery term that means to miss the mark. What is the mark? When we're shooting and firing and seeing and knowing that we're all one and we're all here for the support of one another and the thriving of every individual expression of God, where we are making the mark. But if we miss the mark, we're firing and shooting in a direction that says, I'm going to aim in a way that says, what's good for me and bad for you. If I think in terms of a win-lose mentality, if I think it's okay for me to harm you, lie to you, try to control you, etc., they're missing the mark in the terms of that in their limited perspectives. Again, different wavelengths, looking up and looking at life. And we don't know what life they've lived. We can try to. And one of the greatest spiritual practices, I really believe, is to try to take on the perspective of others. But to the greater degree that we can look at their lives and say, if I'd lived their life, perhaps I would decide and act like them. If I can walk a mile in their shoes mentally for a little while, it opens me to compassion for them, even if I still have to disagree with their actions. I can see how they are missing the mark in terms of making choices and actions that are less than. So we have our different perspectives that can see people who are, quote unquote, sinning by not acting in a manner that's for the greatest good of all. But then how is that for the delight of God? How is what they're doing for the delight of God? And this gets into a recognition that we don't understand the total mystery of life. That no matter how much we try to understand it, we still have a limited perspective. We can grow in our spiritual awareness and oneness. We can have taste of non-duality in our meditations. We can recognize the fact that this reality around us is just a temporary expression of form that we are moving through. We can understand that intellectually and maybe to a degree emotionally. But it's only when we can let go of it in an emotional level and truly see things from a non-dual nature. And I don't know those things that you and I would probably agree on that are hard to see as being for the delight of God. How are they truly for the delight of God? Well, it gets to the fact that we have to step out of form. We have to step out of time. And this is hard for us to do, but we have to step out of this world in which we're living and moving and having our being and seeing things from a different perspective, where we recognize there is this play. In certain Eastern traditions, they call this Lila. Lila is the play of life that is occurring. And so at the human level, there is a play going on, but in the transformative higher levels where we transcend time and space, we can look back at this and see that this play is really for the delight of the divine, as it allows aspects of the divine to choose oneness and love and to make choices that are less than that, and for us to come together through the contrast of those things that are lesser for more and more aspects of the one to move towards remembering of their truth of unity. That we are moving through a divine play where we see things that are less than what we like and have a hard time labeling them as being for the delight of the divine. But that's because our perspective can't see. We can't step off the wheel of life and see how that is interacting and serving a greater and higher evolution for these individual aspects of mind. So that is good. Wayne says, I'm not Canadian, but I like you. Wayne, I like you too. And I think Americans who are, this whole world of form thing that is going on, we need to transcend it. When we look at the human hearts of people, no matter what country they're in, it's easy to demonize a country because of their leaders and their political actions they're making. It's getting at the same thing that Shay was asking about. Is that there are so many people who make these wrong choices, but the people in the countries are spiritual beings, and most of their hearts are not in the actions. Yes, we don't get to know. It's one of the greatest mysteries alive. It really is. And it encourages us when we open our hearts to love, when we open our hearts to seeing and sensing at the deepest level the unity of all it is. It allows us, this is an interesting thing that I know I have a lot of discussion with people. How can you have compassion for people who seem to be causing harm to others? Well, I often say we have to recognize what they're doing, see through it, understand that if we had lived their lives, we might feel that, have an acorn of compassion for them, but at the same time, in the world of form, have healthy boundaries, both against what they're doing, take actions against what they're doing for protecting the greater good, speak and act from a way of love. What we don't want to do is to fight anger and separation with anger and separation. This is why the actions of Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and others who followed a path of nonviolence have been so strong, because they know that when an eye for an eye leads for everybody being blind, as it's often attributed to Gandhi saying. And that is so true. When we fight back, but that doesn't mean don't have healthy boundaries. Protect yourself. If people are attacking you verbally or physically, protect yourself. You can do that in a way that is not filled with hate, that is not filled with anger. Protection doesn't mean attack. Sometimes you have to, in the protecting yourself, yes, we can get into the gray area of that at another time, but we have to look through and act without hate. And that's the bottom line. Can we be proactive in protecting humanity's successes, their evolution, their consciousness towards unity and oneness, and protect those who seek to harm that, at the same time that our protective efforts are not done with hate? It's very difficult, but we can do it. We can do it. Okay. I think, let's see. Any others? Okay, well, it looks like, we have run over just a little bit. So what I want to do is thank everybody for being with us today. I want to make sure, if you don't know about it and you enjoy my teachings, I write blogs. I do have a YouTube channel where I do YouTube videos. If you like my content, I would encourage you to go to my website. You can sign up for my irregular newsletter. But also from that website, you can find my writings. You've got links to my YouTube channel. You can find my videos, and I'm constantly publishing videos and articles, all with the science of mind backdrop and new thought backdrop. I hope that you find that well. Often, I also want to remind you that this program comes to you through the New Thought Media Network, and the New Thought Media Network operates on your donations and your support. All of the programming here is through volunteers. My actions here today are totally in a volunteer, as are all the hosts of this program. And I hope that you find benefit from the time and discussions that we have, and that you support the New Thought Network by going to their website at ntmedia.org and donating on their donate button. And be sure to sign up for their newsletter as well. And so with all of that said, I want to thank you all for joining me this Saturday and us moving through this conversation. I want to thank you, Shay, and Wayne, and Mark, and everyone else who have participated with us. And for those of you who watch the recording after the fact, thank you as well. I certainly appreciate you being here. Blessings, and take care. Enjoy your journey.